And then we talked about economic development, because that's issue number one, is job creation. And I'm proud to say the second piece of legislation that I was able to sign into law tied into economic development and important for this area, which was pure Michigan funding. To put a sustainable path of funding for tourism for the future. Because that is key to more and better jobs for many places in our state. But that was only the starting point. I laid out a roadmap that we've been following since then. In February, we did budget and tax reform. Those were among the toughest things a group could take on, but they needed to be addressed. You looked at our tax system. We had a broken tax system in our state. The Michigan business tax was the dumbest tax in the United States. It's fundamentally unfair. It basically created situations where, as a business person, if you made no money, you could pay a significant tax liability. If you made the same amount of money as a colleague in another industry, you could pay 5 to 10 times as much money as that colleague, simply because you were in a different industry. And then above that, if you're a partnership, an S corporation, a small business, not only did you have to pay that tax, but you were already paying on your individual tax return. You were subject to a double tax. And the way I look at it, it's fair to ask people to contribute where they have ability to pay. But shouldn't our business community, our job creators, be paying the same rate as those of us with salaries and wages and other forms of income? And that's how you create an environment for jobs. And to be open with you, we took on an issue that did get a lot of people upset. We talked about taxing pensions in the long term. That's something that needed to be done, though. And what we did is we put in a transitional plan so the people that are already retired aren't going to suffer through those issues or pay additional liability. But for those of you that have ability to pay in the long term, isn't it fair that you also contribute to the system at the same rate that the rest of us are? And the grounds I say that on is I'll come back to the point about our kids. Most of us agree we want to keep our kids in the state. And the structural issue we were addressing is if we didn't fix that over the next 20 years, we were going to be building an economic system in our state that was going to be putting more and more tax burden on our young people because we had people that were older that wouldn't be contributing. So for all the desire we wanted to keep those young people in the state, we're going to create a system to drive them out of our state by unduly taxing them. We've solved that problem. So we can be on this all together as a team. Then we took on the budget issues. Michigan hadn't had a balanced budget for a long time. Legally it did because it did accounting gimmicks or one-time funds or federal funds to balance the budget. So we put together a package that has no accounting gimmicks, no one-time funds, and actually recognizes there's a balance sheet. So we started making payments on our long-term liabilities and also putting some money aside in the rainy day fund, which had 30 minutes worth of funding in it. And for all the talk you hear in Washington, their whole discussion, all that mess, was about the balance sheet, about raising the debt ceiling. And their discussion was about raising the debt ceiling, about how they're going to take on more and more liabilities. Where in Michigan, in the first part of the year, our focus has been on how do we start managing, stopping those liabilities from growing and making responsible payments towards paying that debt down. So we don't leave that for our kids. Those are things that needed to happen. Now we've continued that path. In March we talked about government reform, about working with local governments as partners on how to be more efficient as a team. And you've done some good things in your community, so I want to give you credit in the Marquette area for opportunities both at the school level and the municipal level where you've talked about doing some things together and done some good things. Education reform was in April. And people said, well, you're doing a lot of things involving students and education. Well, it's about time. To give you the numbers, in case you didn't know, if you looked at the ACT test that most of our kids took, and you looked at the performance on that test in terms of all the different subjects, it showed that 16% of our kids were college ready. 16%. That was the number when I gave the talk. We got the more recent update after I gave that special message. You know what the number went to? We did improve. Went to 17%. There's only one number that matters. It's 100%. Anything less than that is unacceptable. And what I would tell you is we have great people in the educational system. We have great teachers, there's great administrators, a lot of good people. But the system is broken. The system has gotten too occupied with spending money, not educating kids. The purpose of an educational system and the focus we are going to have is on student growth. It's about kids getting that education that we all want them to have. And redirect all that energy, all those bright, talented people towards that goal in a more efficient fashion. Now, as I said, the first 6 months, those were the topics we covered. We didn't finish all the work, but we got a lot done. To give you some idea, during the first 6 months, roughly I've signed somewhere just under 130 bills into law. That's roughly a pace of 1 every 2 days. And so I need to, again, thank the legislature for being such partners. But the key metric is not the quantity, but the quality of the legislation, which has been very high. But again, we are not stopping there. So the fall, the lineup that I announced even back earlier in the year, is September we're going to do health and wellness. We need to take more responsibility for our health and our wellness. There are reforms we can do right here in Michigan on health care and such. Forget about all the federal issues. There are good, important things we can do better as Michiganders that we need to step up and work on. October is going to be about infrastructure. Sewer, water, roads, bridges, broadband. We all know the orange barrel exercise. We all know we can do better. Let's get started. And then in November, we're going to do a message on talent. The old days, people call it workforce development. That's not a very good title. It's about talent. Because what we're going to do is we're going to innovate. We're going to leap to leading the nation and how we do talent development in our state. And what do I mean by that? Again, we have some very talented people helping give educations to our kids, some good workforce programs. But if you think about it, most of our effort in that field is all on programs to give people skills. How much do we talk about where's demand for jobs, where's the future demand, what do those jobs look like, where are they going to be, and how do those programs that are on the demand side, the supply side, match up with those? How do you get supply and demand to come into balance? Because we have openings today that aren't being filled for very good positions. As I went around Michigan, if you're a welder, you can get a job in the state in about 30 minutes. Whether you're in Detroit, Lake Michigan Shoreline, or up here. How many people know where the welding programs are? And that's an honorable career and how much money you can make. Let's tell people. Let's help connect people. So that's November. And there's more work to be done beyond that. What I can tell you, though, is exciting. So that's kind of the what. But I'm going to come back to the how we're doing this. Because I talked about relentless positive action. But the biggest thing I'll tell you is not just passing a law or a regulation. The biggest challenge I see as governor is changing how we treat one another. It's changing our culture in this state. Because we've been beaten up for a lot of years. We've gone through a tough 10 years. And in too many cases, we've become too negative. We've gotten too down on ourselves. Or we've looked at that shrinking pie to say, how do we get that piece of the pie at someone else's expense? And every time that win-lose attitude shows up, whether it be geography, whether it be racial and ethnic issues, or any other cause, every Michigander loses. And we have to stop looking in the rearview mirror. We should be proud of our heritage. Let's be proud of what we accomplished, but let's not live there. It is time for a new attitude in Michigan. It is time to be more positive. It is time to be more forward-thinking. And it is time to be inclusive. That's the real power that we have in front of us. It's about Michiganders coming together as 10 million people to say we will be the best. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us working together.